I'm posting tonight along with Judy Aronson, who's my left-hand woman. I say left-hand because I'm left-handed and I'm biased to left-handed people. So can't do this without her. Thank you, Judy. And so she will be helping me tonight. We're anticipating questions and answers for about 45 minutes with Anne. If anyone has questions that want to submit questions, I ask that you submit them in the chat. It would be helpful if you put Q or question before that so that I know or Judy can see that right away. If there's comments, we could just avoid those and get right to the questions. What else? We also have with us Lissa Levy. She is running for District 3 as a trustee. She's running unopposed, and because we thought we'd have extra time tonight, we thought we'd invite her to come and she could introduce herself. And you're also welcome to ask her some questions if you like. I spoke to her last week. She's availing herself to anyone. She's still going to work hard, and she still is willing to answer questions, even though she's unopposed. So we'll give her a few minutes, 10 to 15 minutes at the end. I think that covers it all. So with that, I wanted to mention that last week we had the clerks, James Johnson and Naima Abraham running for clerk of Skokie. All the candidates were invited. Manal Desai did not participate, but we were able to see the other two candidates. And with that, I'm going to give the floor to Anne. If you could please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Alanka, Judy, I'm so grateful to you for this opportunity. And I'd like to recognize the great work that you've done within Indivisible. Started as Indivisible Skokie, and it's now Indivisible Skokie, Morton Grove, and Lincolnwood. So you've made great strides in what, about 6 to 8 months. So thank you for that, doing that for our community. It's unfortunate that my opponents didn't have the respect for our community or the courage to participate in tonight's event. As Alanka explained, they've also both declined to participate in the League of Women Voters forum that was scheduled for late February, which has been canceled. I'm told that the other 3 forums that the League is planning for other races in Skokie will take place as planned. I am delighted to participate this evening. I appreciate the work of Indivisible Skokie, but I also appreciate everyone who's on the call for being here to learn more about me, why I'm running, and my vision for Skokie. As I prepared for tonight's event, it occurred to me that, there's always a risk that by my putting myself out there and being honest with the residents about where I stand, that my opponents will try to use that against me. Cherry pick a video clip, take something out of context, or twisting what I say. But talking directly to Skokie voters and addressing their concerns is always going to be my first priority. And that's why I'm here tonight. So with that introduction, I look forward to, I believe you have a few questions for me first, Alanka, and then we'll open it up.
I was muted. So yes, exactly. I'd like to ask you a few questions just to get it started. And then if anyone has questions, again, please put it in the chat. Please identify with the keyword question that you're asking a question. So my first question for tonight, I was curious as to what sets you apart from your opponents.
Thank you for asking me that question. I am the only mayoral candidate with a 35-year career in local government, 25 years of which was right here in Skokie. And in addition to serving as the village's marketing and communications director for 25 years, I also have been involved in nonprofit leadership in Skokie. I have a master's degree in public administration that I earned when I was a young working mother. I persevered. It took me 6 years. I had a baby in the middle, but I persevered and I did it. I also served as an elected trustee on the Oakton College Board. I started my college career and studies at Oakton, and I met my husband Howard there more than 43 years ago. I was privileged to serve 2 6-year terms on Oakton's board from 2007 to 2019. and I chose not to run for a third term in 2019. Howard and I lived in Park Ridge for many years before we chose to move our family to Skokie in 2015. I loved Skokie so much that, and Howard had grown up here, and it just became clear that we needed to live here. And we've never looked back. But while we lived in Park Ridge, I also was involved in the community. And I served on the Zoning Board of Appeals in Park Ridge for 13 years. And for 7 years, just prior to when we moved to Skokie, I chaired the Zoning Board of Appeals. When I left Oakton's board in 2019, I sought a seat on the board of the then new and growing Skokie Community Foundation because I was so taken with the important work of that foundation to help Skokie residents in need. I served on the foundation board for 5 years, and I chaired it for the last year until I left to launch my campaign. As a candidate and as mayor, I will serve all of Skokie. I see many faces and names on tonight's call of people that I've met along the way through the campaign as I've been out and about for nearly a year now, speaking with Skokie residents, through organizations like the Skokie Community Foundation, Kiwanis, Rotary Clubs, both of which I'm a member, and also through my work for 25 years for the village. Central to my campaign has been the idea that I need to hear from every corner of the community to understand residents' hopes of the future and their areas of concern. That's why I've attended so many community events and I've held my caffeine and conversation sessions around Skokie. And that is why I'm here tonight. And I will continue those caffeine and conversation events. We have a busy schedule in February and March with lots of in-home coffees, thanks to residents who are opening their homes to their neighbors. But we will also schedule some open caffeine and conversations at coffee shops throughout Skokie. All that said, it's not enough to say you'll be an inclusive leader. I think you have to demonstrate it in everything you do, including in how you run your campaign. I have a track record of bringing folks together with very different perspectives to have respectful conversations, to listen to each other, and to create and forge common ground and find shared purpose. Some of those projects, and maybe I'll talk about them in more detail later through the village, was I led a community review of the Skokie Police Department use of force policy during 2020 and 2021. That led to a comprehensive report that I drafted working with a small subcommittee of public safety and human relations commissioners, and it resulted in some changes to the way things are done in Skokie. We have a wonderful police department, but this was an important work that needed to be done. And I brought in 16 different community groups to weigh in and have these often difficult but honest discussions. And we found and forged consensus. I developed the Know Your Neighbor, Know Your Community initiative back in the, it was 2009 to 2011, that brought neighbors from every corner of Skokie together to learn more about each other and to strengthen our community. And on a fun note, the community spaghetti dinners that were held in Skokie in 2016 and 2017, those were my idea. And I don't know if any of you attended. If you did, they were super fun at Skokie firehouses and at our public works department. So that's a track record of projects, just a small slice of the projects that I worked on over 25 years in Skokie to bring our community together and to build community. As a leader, I believe you cannot shy away from hard things. You have to engage deeply with your neighbors to understand their perspectives and find common ground.
I'm sorry, I was knocked off of Zoom. Did Judy ask you any questions following up?
No.
Okay. So I'll go out with my second question then. You worked for the village for about 25 years. I think you retired in 2023, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Why are you running now?
That's a great question. Thank you. And I want to start because I realized that I neglected to mention something that to me is very significant about my background. Prior to coming on staff, I mentioned that I've had a 35-year career, 25 years of which was in Skokie. Prior to coming on staff with the Village of Skokie, I served as the Assistant Executive Director of SWANK, the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County. So from the time when recycling and environmental initiatives were just starting to take root in our area, I was involved on the ground floor of many of those initiatives. And it was a fun and exciting time. And I learned a lot, and I still speak the language. But the question that you posed about why I'm running for Skokie now, for Skokie mayor now, 2 years after my retirement, it really focuses on 3 areas. First, my observation of eroding and increasingly poor leadership in the village. We have so much to be proud of in Skokie, but in recent years, I've observed village leadership letting us down on many fronts by making poor financial decisions, as is demonstrated by the shell or skeleton of a hotel on Oakton Street in downtown Skokie. Village leadership recently has failed to address growing problems. Evidence of that is the rats. Boy, last summer and continuing, I hear about rats from every corner of the community. And finally, just not listening to the community it serves. And the best evidence of that is the Carvana debacle. I had a front row seat, and an interesting seat, to watch that unfold, as I was still with the village at that time. I also made my decision to run for mayor truly based on the success of the electoral reforms that were on the ballot in 2022. And I tip my hat to the individuals who were involved in that effort. As a result of that, it's clear that I'm not the only one who was frustrated with village leadership that has increasingly thought that it knows best rather than truly listening to residents. As part of my consideration, I looked at data from elections. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to throw some numbers out. In 2021, when George Van Dusen was reelected, he did so on about 4,600 votes and some change. Each of the 3 November 2022 questions that were on the ballot about electoral reforms, each one of those questions received on average 18,200 votes, and they passed by margins of 53% or better. So what that showed me was that this community is ready for change. Following the April 1st election, we won't just have a new mayor in Skokie for the first time in 25 years, or 24 years, excuse me. We'll have a new representation model, new trustees, and quite possibly a new village clerk. And this is really exciting. But that brings me to really the last point I'd like to make as to why I am running for mayor and why now. Because with all of these changes, there's a clear need for experienced, inclusive leadership. If we want village leadership to come together and get things done, our community needs a leader like me who knows the ins and outs of local government and can bring people with diverse perspectives together to discuss difficult issues, identify opportunities, and solve problems by creating common ground. And again, that leader is me.
You mentioned change, and just briefly, what 3 things would you change? What are the first 2 things you would do if you were mayor?
Could you repeat the question? Just the 3 things that I would
3
change?
things that you would want to change in Skokie, that you'd like to work on, that you can improve.
Okay. So I think they would all center around having a more community-led focus on economic development. So first and foremost, the village needs an economic development plan. We do not have one. And I think it's time that we finally have a comprehensive plan to ensure that residents have a chance to weigh in and shape decision-making at the outset of projects. We don't need another Carvana. I also know that it's imperative that the village change the way it enters into contracts for significant development, so that the village isn't left holding the bag. The abandoned downtown hotel reflects a pattern of village leadership failing to do their homework, which has led them to repeatedly enter into development agreements with well-meaning but unreliable, under-resourced partners. I'll make sure that we strengthen our contracts, that they're forged with care and not, in backroom deals or in the middle of the night, and that we will conduct our due diligence so we know exactly who we're partnering with. To shift away from those kind of big, broad concepts, I'd like to talk about fostering small businesses. Small businesses are near and dear to my heart. My family owned one in Des Plaines, where I grew up, for more than 60 years. In Skokie, we're incredibly lucky to have many, many vibrant, small, family-owned businesses. And many of those families not only have chosen to, they live in Skokie, and they have chosen to start their businesses here, which to me is incredible. Ensuring that they flourish throughout Skokie is one of the cornerstones of my campaign. It's time to make sure that we invest in those small businesses instead of just incentivizing large developments, that we need to look out for these local businesses and small businesses in every neighborhood, making it easier for them to access village, county, and state resources. And I have some very specific components on my platform on how I will do that. I know you asked for 3, but I want to ask for your indulgence, and just throw in a 4th. And there are 3 quick points I'd like to make on this one. I would like to make Village Hall and village leadership more accessible. And here's how I'll do it. It has long bothered me for many years, including when I worked with the village. It bothered me that the village does not have regular weekend or evening hours at Village Hall to better accommodate working families. The current 8:30 to 5 p.m. weekday hours at Village Hall are a disservice to the community, and that needs to change. Under my leadership, again, it's a small thing, but I believe it's important. I will make sure that there are regular early morning, early evening, or even weekend day hours where residents can conduct business at village counters if they need to. I will also take a look at restructuring how public comments are held at village board meetings, which are now set for the very last thing on the agenda. This needs to be looked at. We can do better. I also will make sure that there are regular opportunities for Skokie residents to meet and greet officials, whether it's at the Skokie Farmers Markets or other community events. That has not been done in the past. It's been done at some times, I know, because I organized those events at the Festival of Cultures, the Backlot Bash, but we need to do it more often. Coffees with the council, things like that so many other communities do. We will do those on a regular basis. Again, it's important to have those hard conversations, to show up, invite the community, and listen to what they have to say. So thank you.
So many questions, but I'm going to turn it over to Judy to answer the questions that participants want to make, because those are more important.
Those have been some very thorough, very interesting answers, and I've really enjoyed listening to you. The first one that was put into the chat was, although legal, is it ethical for mayoral candidates to seek/receive financial contributions from current village employee groups whose salary and benefit increases they would have the authority to determine if elected?
Would you repeat the question, Judy? I want to make sure that I understand it.
Okay. Excuse me. Although legal, is it ethical for mayoral candidates to seek or receive financial contributions from current village employee groups whose salary and benefit increases they would have the authority to determine if elected.
Thank you. I have a sense that I know what this is about. I am very, very proud that I have received the endorsement of the Skokie Firefighters Union. The firefighters sought me out during summer of 2024 when they heard of my candidacy, because they know the quality of my leadership and my character. And they have endorsed me and they have provided funds for my campaign. And I am not embarrassed about that. And I am proud of their endorsement. That endorsement came not as a political favor or as a political chit to anyone. It was because, again, my former colleagues with whom I worked shoulder to shoulder know me and know my character. When time comes for collective bargaining, I will not be involved in that. That will be a function of, again, under the council manager form of government, which I worked in and respected and will for 25 years and will continue to respect when I'm in the chair of mayor. Those collective bargaining sessions will be up to staff, and there are skilled staff who will lead those efforts, and the entire village board will consider any changes that are made to those contracts. So it is not a unilateral decision by the mayor, and I stand by that endorsement, and I'm proud of it. And I want to add that in addition to receiving the support of the Skokie Firefighters Union, again, at their request, I have not reached out to any other current village staff for endorsements, or certainly funds. However, I have received endorsements and even campaign donations from numerous former colleagues, again, with whom I worked shoulder to shoulder and who know me, know my character, and know that I am the best candidate to be Skokie's next mayor.
In
So
a
thank you.
similar question, Anne,
Yep.
I see that your one of your opposing candidates is running, I guess, together for with a few other people that might be on the board if they are elected.
Mhm.
Have you endorsed anyone? And if so, why?
I am an independent candidate. The fact that with the electoral reforms, that I am able to run a campaign like this as an independent, and as evidenced by the tight race that we're in, independence to me right now is everything. And it is such a change and a refreshing change in Skokie. When I entered this race, I decided that remaining neutral and cordial with all the other candidates was my best course for maintaining positive relationships that will enable me to better serve and lead this new group of officials as our community's mayors. I was not going to get involved in factions or groups. I don't think that right here, right now in our community that's on the precipice of the most significant changes in governance that have taken place in over 70 years, I don't think there's room for that anymore. And I don't believe that that's what our community wants. As mayor, by not endorsing and not having these alliances and factions during the electoral period, I know that I will be able to lead this group from day one without grudges and problems. I'm confident of that. I am friends with many of the candidates, including my neighbor, Lissa Levy, who is on tonight's call. And even though I have these friendships, and some of them are long and they're wonderful friendships, I am not publicly endorsing any other candidates, nor am I aligning my campaigns with theirs.
Okay,
Judy, would
the
you like to
next
read the next
question.
question?
Yeah, thank you. The next question is, will you increase the affordable housing limit on new developments? If so, by how much?
I appreciate that question. Affordable and inclusionary housing is such an important issue in Skokie. I think that the ordinance that was passed last year, I know there are people on both sides of that ordinance. Some wish it were stronger, some wish it weren't as strong. I think it's an important start. I'm pleased that the village has a housing committee. As mayor, I'll take another look at that committee. There are many dedicated residents who will sit around that table. I'll take a fresh look and just make sure that we have all the right voices and seats at the table, because I am all about making sure that there are enough seats at the table and that there are a broad perspective of voices and ranges of perspectives at the table. We need to make sure that we're finding the balance between having affordable, inclusionary workforce housing, but yet not blocking development. I've read the village's ordinance. I'm familiar with it. I think it's an interesting start. I don't know that's where we need to end up. But as mayor, I'm not right now going to commit to how I'm going to increase it and what measures would be taken to increase it. I think that all needs to be studied and looked at. And I guess what I will say and what I will commit to again is keeping an open mind to make sure that ordinance reflects the values of our community.
Thank you. The next one gets real interesting, I think, because a lot of people don't realize how this all works, and it's something that I've learned in the past. Is there anything in your plans about improving roads in Skokie? Some of the major thoroughfares like Grosse Pointe, Crawford, and Oakton that are in need of resurfacing. Would this be something you can address?
Thank you for asking that question, whoever put that in the chat. We have an interesting situation in Skokie about our roads because there are so many jurisdictions. We have the village that has jurisdiction over, 80%? I don't know if it's 80%, but a large percentage. I shouldn't put a number on that. A large percentage of our roads. And then you've got Cook County. And then you've got the Illinois Department of Transportation. And those are the ones, and were cited specifically in this question, which is why I appreciate it, where there are times when I believe Skokie has received short shrift, especially like when you look at Oakton Street, east of Skokie Boulevard, although the county does have some big plans for that right now. So as mayor, what I will continue to do is to forge positive relationships throughout the region to make sure that there are attention is paid to Skokie, to our roads. We will make sure through our Public Works Department and through our officials that we have attention paid to what needs to be done, both short-term and long-term, on the major thoroughfares in Skokie to keep them in acceptable condition for our community. Our engineers are great. And when I was the village's marketing director, it would be usually by about March, the middle of March, especially when there had been an abundance of freeze and thaw conditions throughout any given winter, we would start to get lots of calls from residents about potholes. And most often those were not, there's a pothole on a street that Skokie has jurisdiction over, you know that our Public Works Department who work, we talk a lot about police and fire, but I have a special fondness in my heart, in addition to those two, to Public Works. Public Works, they touch every property every day. And when there is a pothole or a problem, they are right on the spot, they roll up their sleeves, they get it fixed. But when there are problems on these other thoroughfares that are not under our jurisdiction, our Public Works and our engineering divisions, along with the village manager's office, and certainly when I'm mayor, we will keep up pressure on the other entities to make sure that our roads are in good condition. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. The next question is there any incentive to bring businesses back to the many empty properties here?
So again, shoring up small businesses and making sure that they thrive, not just in downtown Skokie, but throughout Skokie is a priority of mine. The village has, and I want to talk a little bit about downtown Skokie, but these points really impact the entire community and can be applied and will be applied to the entire community. So the village has grants that are available to businesses to make interior and exterior improvements. The funding levels vary depending on what's done, depending on whether they're in tax increment financing districts or out. But these grants are funded in arrears, which often puts them out of reach to exactly the folks who need the most. I mentioned that my family had a small business for many years. And I'll tell you, I don't believe, and my parents are not with me any longer, so I'm not able to ask them this question, but just reflecting on our business, I don't imagine that there was ever a time where my parents or my grandparents who started the business had an extra, 50, 40, 50, $70,000 to put into the business and then wait for months to be reimbursed. So I think what we would need to do would be to take a look at how those funds are allocated. I want to be clear. I understand the importance of being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And there needs to be parameters on how and when those funds are dispersed. But I don't know that having them dispersed in arrears is enough of an incentive, not just in downtown Skokie, but around the community. I want to stay in downtown Skokie for a moment with my comments. I'm very excited that downtown Skokie has a brand new revitalized merchants group. I was involved in the last one, IMODS. Some of you might remember the acronym, the Independent Merchants of Downtown Skokie. And working with that group, I have to tell you, was one of the highlights of my 25 years with the village. That group, as has happened over the years, that group, kind of dissolved, but now there's a new group, and it's led by none other than Madeline England, who is the owner of Needs and Wants Artisan Bakery on Lincoln Avenue. But I plan to work closely with them and listen. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not going to usurp, anything to do with the council manager form of government. But it will be important for me to show up and listen. And I know that village staff is listening as well. These business owners, they have great insights into how to further strengthen our downtown. The business owners in these pockets, these retail pockets throughout Skokie that are still there, that are hanging on, the little shopping centers that when my husband grew up in Skokie, his mom went to buy him blue jeans or tennis shoes or, makeup for his sister. Those neighborhoods, those little neighborhood shops, we need to hear from those residents as well. I tip my hat to Lissa. Lissa was the spark that got things going on Main Street, which is terrific. And I think that we need to listen to the merchants and lean into what they tell us is needed. I also know that we need to look into other types of incentives. And I would work closely with the village manager, and he's got a talented team on his economic development and community development staff, and to come up with some other creative incentives that we could use to help fill the storefronts throughout Skokie. One last thing I want to say about small businesses. I know this because of my time with the village. I heard numerous times from businesses that were trying to get open that unfortunately, due to whether it was lack of communication or different departments being involved in the permit approval processes. And I know that village staff try hard not to have this happen, but I heard many times that there would be what I would characterize as 11th hour surprises, where there were code requirements that were unexpected, that would stall the opening of these businesses, which is usually comes at a cost, not only a cost for whatever compliance there needs to get that certificate of occupancy, but there can also just be costs of, sunk costs of having to pay rent or what other else they're doing during this time that the business isn't open. So I'd like to make sure that these 11th hour surprises don't occur anymore, as I think will, make Skokie an even friendlier community for businesses.
Okay. Next question. What will you do about the future of Skokie's legal counsel?
That's a very direct question, isn't it? I'm glad that's asked. And that is one of those tough questions that you have to just, face straight on. And I think I can answer it best in one sentence. I want a professional legal department for the village of Skokie that is devoid of political entanglement and political influence. And not only do I want it, but I believe that our community wants that and deserves it.
Okay, thank you. Next question. With the issues with the rats, would you bring back the trash pickup to twice a week?
I know there has been a lot of talk about, and it's it's not just talk, it's the fact that the dramatic increase in the number of rats in the community correlated to when twice a week garbage went away. But I don't right now, as I sit here, I can't say, okay, we're going to solve the rat issue. We're going to add twice a week garbage back in and it'll be done. I don't think that is, that could be part of the solution, but I don't think it's the entire solution. And I also think, as I know there are reasons why we went to once a week garbage pickup. There were some sustainability issues at play. So I think we need to look at both issues. I don't think we can separate the rat problem from the switch to once a week garbage. I don't think we can separate those, but I think we need to look at the entire problem holistically. I mean, to be very specific, what I will do is to bring in experts to assess Skokie's approach to date. We have some experts right in our community who are not being tapped for their expertise. We'll bring them in and make sure that they're part of the discussions. I'd look at possibly establishing a task force with members of the Board of Health and the Sustainability Commission to evaluate potential strategies going forward. I had occasion during my years with the village to work on, and I mentioned a number of them, to work on projects, tough projects, like the use of force, Skokie Police use of force policy community review. And we brought in the Human Relations Commission and the Public Safety Commissions. And I know the great work that can result from different village boards and commissions working together around an area of mutual concern. So I'd look at bringing a task force with members of those groups and maybe others from outside of the board and commission structure in to take a look at it. We need a comprehensive plan to effectively and efficiently address the rat problem. We need to monitor the progress and give regular reports to the community, like the village has been doing. They've been giving some regular updates, but it took a while to get there. And I also know that it's very important to take a look at regional issues. The rats don't know borders, do they? And I know people in Wilmette who have told me that they're having issues with rats. Skokie, my time with the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County and, you know, my continued work in local government has shown me the value of regionalism. We have a great partner in the Northwest Municipal Conference that 73, I believe it's 73 or 74 towns, including Skokie, belong to. And I think it's really important to tap the Northwest Municipal Conference and our neighbors for what are they doing and collaborating, possibly on a region-wide approach. If not, you know, maybe there's some joint purchasing that we could take advantage of. If everybody's having the problem, and the Northwest Municipal Conference does this, they have a joint purchasing initiative, but maybe we don't even need to work with the conference. Maybe it would just be with our immediate neighbors, and we could get some economies of scale in purchasing whatever services are needed to supplement. Now, other neighboring communities don't have, you know, health and human services and those the like. Skokie is very, Evanston does, excuse me, but Wilmette and some of the others don't. So we'll take a look at addressing it regionally. So thank you. That was a very long answer to that question, but rats are a big deal. I learned that. The rats are a real issue in our community, and I'm committed to making that better.
Well, in Morton Grove, they told me that part of the problem is that we all have such lovely yards filled with such beautiful vegetation that we're just feeding them too well. That's actually what they said. Next question. In working closely with the current mayor for 25 years, why didn't he endorse you for mayor?
You know, I don't know. You'd have to ask him. However, what I can tell you is that I've known George for over 32 years. He and I we had a professional, warm, friendly, productive relationship. I'm proud of the stack of complimentary letters and notes that I have received from George over the 25 years that I worked for the village, about the quality of my work and my dedication to our community. If I had to guess, it would be because when George and I met last year, George and my birthdays are a day apart. And on my birthday, early last February, we met for coffee at a coffee shop in Skokie at my invitation. And I told George about my thoughts. At that time, they were just thoughts about running. I asked him about his plans, which he wasn't sure of at that time. And during that conversation, I expressed interest in, you know, possibly changing and taking a fresh look at some things. George Van Duzen has been mayor for 25 years. He's been on the village board for 40 years. And I understand that the idea of some changes might be hard. So again, that's a guess. I honestly don't know.
That's a very fair answer. Next question. Do you support the Old Orchard Business District and its designation as blighted?
So here's what I know about Old Orchard, and I'll talk about the word blighted because I share, you know, that is a fraught word, and it's a troubling word. But I understand, because of my years in government, that it's nomenclature that is used, you know, to forge some of these programs and statutes that allow different taxing incentives to take place. So Old Orchard isn't blighted, certainly, but I do understand that there is an abundant, how do I say this, a large property tax burden on Old Orchard that comes from Cook County. So I also understand what an economic engine Old Orchard is for Skokie. It is just that. The revenues, the millions of dollars of revenue that come to our community from Old Orchard every year. And think about it. The people that are paying those taxes and including this additional 1%, the vast majority of those people are not from our community. they are paying. So people from outside the community, I'm going to digress for just a moment and throw out something here. So when I was with the village, I had the privilege of being a founding member of the Chicago's North Shore Convention and Visitors Bureau. And my involvement with that bureau led me to know that the biggest tourism draw for our area, it's not Old Orchard, not even the Botanic Garden, it is Northwestern University. And I know that people who attend Northwestern University, the parents who bring their kids here, the Big Ten supporters who come to the football games, the grad students at Kellogg, what have you, they stay in our hotels, they shop at Old Orchard. We in Skokie reap the benefit of those dollars. So what I think is important, though, is that Old Orchard needs to stay vibrant to continue supporting everything that we value in Skokie, having our health department, having our human services division, the things that some other communities don't have, that those revenues have allowed us to do. But what I know and what I have heard loud and clear, and what I've expressed a few minutes ago, I know the importance of bringing resources to small businesses in our community. So that's where I stand.
Okay. Excuse me. The next question. Would you agree that the coding and approval process in Skokie is a nightmare? And if so, what will you do to fix it?
If I'm understanding that question correctly, I think they're talking about codes when they're not talking about the village code. You're talking about code enforcement or opening a new business.
Why doesn't Celeste unmute herself and maybe she can clarify the
Or
question?
just put it in the chat. That's,
Okay.
you could just clarify when you say coding, if you're meaning I'm not sure, I'd like to parse that so that I answer the right question. Permits, yes, thanks, Celeste. Yeah, permits. Oh boy, I've heard from residents for many, many, many years about the issue with permits. I know that village staff work hard to provide, oh, it was Renee, okay. Thank you, Renee. Renee Roy actually gave that question, so let's just put in the chat. I've heard from residents and from businesses how slow the process can be, how frustrating the process can be, how there can be, as I alluded to earlier, there can be 11th hour surprises. Yes, it's an issue. I know the village staff are dedicated in the community development and building divisions. They work hard, they're spread thin. They've have made advancements in having online access, so some of those things can be done online. But I believe that the permitting process needs to continually be studied. We need to look at best practices in other communities. We need to make it easier, more intuitive, more efficient. So I always had an eye to that, although in my position as communications director, all I could do was communicate to the community what was. But as mayor, I am aware that that is an issue, and I will keep an eye on it.
Okay. Next question. Specifically, how would you resolve the skeleton hotel development in downtown Skokie, and how long will it take?
Oh, I only wish I knew. I wish I knew how long it would take. The first thing I would do, and I have pledged, if you look at my website, I have it on there, within 30 days of being sworn in, I will make sure that there is a report to the community. This stalled project, as I said earlier, and it bears repeating, it reflects a pattern of village leadership failing to do their homework. which has led Skokie to repeatedly. It started with High Point at 8,000 North. If you'll remember, that development on the northwest corner of Lincoln and Oakton started and stopped. There was an unused crane on the property for many, many months that it was paid for by the village and not used. But again, this is a pattern of the village entering into development agreements with unreliable, under-resourced partners. It's time to turn that eyesore into something that will bring excitement to our downtown. And we must begin discussing these projects in a transparent manner because these are important decisions about using taxpayer funds. So the first thing that I will do is work with the village manager to bring in first of all, we need to find out what are the lawsuits, needs to be sorted out. And there needs to be a full transparent report to the village. Possibly bring in an outside firm to take a look at the project and make recommendations. Okay, now what? So we need to identify opportunities for the future development. We need to provide the community, not just, and again, I've pledged within 30 days, but there need to be regular open discussions about this. We need to deliver regular transparent updates to the community and bring in outside economic development experts to review the previous development agreements and advise, so I really see this as a multifaceted issue. It's how to deal with the issue at hand. What's the highest and best use of this property and how can we get it working for the betterment of our community? But then we also need to look at it in terms of a pattern and how we need to change the way that we look at these agreements and forging these agreements in the future to protect the village going forward.
Okay. Next question is, do you support the glut of luxury rental developments in Skokie?
Skokie needs a variety of housing. And we do need, and this what I read between the lines in this question is, do I support affordable housing? And I gave a comprehensive answer to that question. Skokie needs a variety of housing in our community. And luxury housing brings people to the community, that creates a market for shopping and spending in our community. So there is room for that, and we need some luxury housing, but we also need attainable, affordable housing that is, your everyday worker at Old Orchard, or the lunch person at one of our schools can afford and work at, or live in a clean, safe environment. So we need a wide variety of housing in Skokie.
Okay, the next question is, do you support the current ban on video gaming terminals in Skokie?
Wow. Talk about your charged issue. That's the issue of video gaming. I know there are some businesses in Skokie, one restaurant in particular, that is very anxious to have video gaming. Here's what I will tell you about video gaming. I believe that for our community deserves and needs, if video gaming is going to come to Skokie, let me say that a little differently. I believe that video gaming needs to be discussed in open. It needs to be discussed transparently. It needs to, if there's video gaming in our community, I recognize, we've got a lot of needs in our community. We have a lot of things that we want. Again, I've mentioned our health department, the services that we offer to those who have needs in the community, and the different programs and services that make Skokie such a wonderful community. Those programs come with a cost. And video gaming could provide revenue for that. the revenue could be allocated towards very specific, narrow programs and services. But I think the most important thing is that gaming would need to be considered in an open, transparent forum. There would need to be many, many discussions. The community would need to have ample opportunity to weigh in. Any such ordinance should not be focused, forged in a back room or, discussed in different groups before our community has a chance to weigh in. So it's not an easy issue. It's one of these tough issues that you gotta, but the most important thing is it would need to be discussed openly, transparently, with ample time for those discussions and consideration. And whatever the final outcome is, it should reflect the values of our community.
Okay, we're running short on time, but we've got a couple of more questions here. One of them is, can you sum up your vision for Skokie in a few words?
Yeah, I've talked a lot tonight, haven't I? My vision for Skokie is to build on what's great and to look to the future with transparency, inclusion, and creativity. There's so many wonderful things to be proud of in Skokie, but we can do better. And when I am Skokie's mayor, we will do better.
Okay, with that, actually, we're gonna say thank you very much and wrap this part of the evening up, because it is actually 8:29.
Yeah,
And
we did go over time.
yeah,
I did want to ask just one follow-up question. How do you receive your fundraising? And if people do want to support you, what can they do to help?
Well, thank you. I'd like to again just thank Indivisible Skokie and Alanka and Judy for your work. Thanks to everyone for coming on this call. My mayoral campaign is truly grassroots, and I think over the course of the next couple months, that is going to become even more apparent by contrast to some of the other campaigns. I welcome your involvement by displaying something as simple as displaying a yard sign, joining our neighborhood canvassing teams, sending neighbor-to-neighbor postcards. We're having our first postcard party the evening of February 11th at Take Flight Spirits in beautiful downtown Skokie. Importantly, please vote on April 1st. Vote for me. I would be grateful. I hope that tonight you've heard things that will make that I've earned your vote. Or you can vote during early voting, which starts on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. Even a grassroots campaign requires funds. I have received donations and generous donations from residents all over this community who share my vision and hopes for Skokie. Information about making a donation can be found on my campaign website, and every donation in any amount will help and will be greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thanks. And I want to apologize that we did go over in time. We are giving Lissa her opportunity to speak. I should have noticed the time. Again, apologize. Just I say a few words about yourself and why you're running. And if anyone has a brief question, a couple questions, that'd be great. She is running again, uncontested. We just had her on here since we only had one candidate for mayor in lieu of 3. So go ahead, Lissa.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Lissa Levy, and I've been a Skokie resident for 10 years. I've had the pleasure of raising my children here and buying my first home here. And I really, really love Skokie. My website is Lissa Loves Skokie, and that is very, very true. And I literally am a neighbor. I'm a resident. I looked down Main Street, which is where I live, and for years, just empty storefronts. So for me, that was really indicative of what else was going on in Skokie. Why do we have these neighborhoods that have so much actual blight and disinvestment? And we have pushes for luxury developments and other developments like what is being proposed at Old Orchard, when we also have these neighborhoods that are just crying out for accessibility, walkability, local businesses. I just couldn't understand. And so my passion project was Meetup on Main, is still Meetup on Main. And it really is me and our neighbors and volunteers and people who love this community coming together to show what's possible if we put a little bit of investment, if we put a little bit of time, if we put a little bit of our heart into our community. From Meetup on Main, it became obvious that if I didn't run, I really didn't know who was. I didn't really know who was going to step up for District 3. And here I am trying to get involved. I'm learning as much as I can about local government. That's certainly not my background, but I am a problem solver and I have been my whole life. And so learning what these issues are gives a great opportunity for creative problem solving that we've already seen on Main Street through my hours and hours and hours of volunteer work and blood, sweat, and tears. I have bled, sweat, and cried right there on Main Street. So I certainly echo many of the things that Anne said about government transparency, about accessibility of government officials. I have always been open to hearing from people, taking suggestions, learning about what's important. And so things like issues like affordable housing, I think it's a good start, our 7%. But if we're looking at the research of what Skokie actually needs, it's closer to 15% that we actually need. So that presents some significant investment in looking forward in future developments. And can we have future developments in Skokie? Yes, we have so many vacant lots. We have so many dilapidated buildings. We have so many opportunities to reimagine this community. I don't really know what else to say. I'd really like to take a couple questions. So if you have any for me, I would be very happy to answer them. I'll just look back and see if there are any.
So far, all I've seen on there are kudos to you for what you've done on Main Street.
Yeah.
There's been several who've said that.
Lissa, I'm going to pose a question. If I
Sure.
may.
What's up?
What would be the top 3 things that you have learned from your experience with Meetup on Main and your involvement there that you would bring to your service on the village board?
Oh, that's a great question.
You will bring, not would, will.
Well, I will. Yes, I'll be there. So let's see, top 3. Number 1, that engaging with the community is not scary and it's very rewarding. And you might not agree with everything that's said. We had this gorgeous wish wall that had all kinds of suggestions about what Main Street should have. And some of them were actionable and some of them were fantastical and some of them were not what I would personally choose. But what I learned from that is that there's room for all of these ideas, and all of these ideas come back to the central question of what kind of Skokie do we want to live in? So that would be one. It's just straight up community engagement and the energy that comes back when you engage. Another thing was, unfortunately, a sad lesson about how frustrating it can be to deal with the village and Village Hall. And I certainly experienced directly issues with obtaining permits, for example, or things that were one way for one meetup or main event and another way for another meetup on main event, but there didn't seem to be connection or consistency. And as a native English speaker, I can only imagine how that goes for residents who aren't native English speakers, who don't have quite as many resources, who maybe only have 5 minutes to get something done at Village Hall instead of standing there for 45 minutes to an hour. So that's lesson number 2. And lesson number 3 is that being out in the community, we are hungry for development. We're hungry for things that we can walk to. We're hungry for safe biking lanes. We're hungry to be able to just go out and enjoy our community. And it is very difficult to do that when the centers of commerce and the centers of investment are located far away from where most people live. And that's unfortunate, and it doesn't have to be that way. It certainly wasn't always that way. I'm receiving pictures from the 50s and 60s of what Main Street looked like from a gentleman who read about me, but he lives in Cincinnati now. That was amazing to me, that somebody who is far away still has this connection to Skokie. I think it's really telling that this is a special, beautiful community, and we should preserve it. I am sure that there was something else that I wanted to say, and I'm totally blanking, and it's very embarrassing, but.
Well, that's okay. Think about it for a little bit, and I'll just, before we wrap up, there was some questions in the chat about Indivisible, Skokie, Morton Grove, and Lincolnwood. So it's been 5 months, more or less, since we expanded it out to, since we took over Skokie, and just a few months since we included Morton Grove and Lincolnwood, our neighbor suburbs. But we do only have a Facebook page right now, but we have an email address so you can contact us. We do meet every Friday night for a unhappy happy hour. We are doing these events every Wednesday. Any contested election in Skokie, Morton Grove, or Lincolnwood is welcome to contact us if they want to come on. And actually, it'd be great if we could have opposing candidates. It would be more interesting. We did last week. Last week was with again with James Johnson and Naima Abraham. And after this, we're going to be working towards saving our main goal of, you've seen it on television, is saving our democracy. And we are going to be working on the midterm elections after this. And Judy would know the exact number of days because she keeps telling me. So
6:43.
see. So on that note, you're welcome to join us. Say, give me your email address if you don't want to join. We are looking to expand into, a webpage eventually. But other than that, there's many ways you can get a hold of me, or I can give you my personal cell number. I'll throw it in the chat. I'm not afraid.
I have one more thing to say. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead. No, that was the opportunity for you to think.
One of the things that I'm hearing a lot about is, I don't know where my district is. And because this is such a new process, there is a tool on the village website to find your district. There's also a tool on my website where you can find your district quite easily. It's actually the same tool. We borrowed it directly, but if you are unsure, and some of those district lines are confusing, especially along Grosse Pointe Road, there are some places on Grosse Pointe where you're in District 1 and some places where you're in District 2, and it's not always the same. So I really encourage people to make sure that they know what their district is and to figure out what, to figure out how to get there. So you can check it on lissalovskokie.com or, of course, the village website. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We enjoyed having you on here, and thank you, Anne, as well. You both did excellent. And we hope to see you again at other forums. I understand, Lissa, that you are going to be at the forum with the League of Women Voters.
Yes, I will.
Which day is that?
Let me check the calendar.
Well, while you check, and so the 24th has been canceled with the Nonpartisan League of Women Voters for the Mayoral people. And we'll just
That what I just put in there.
It's on the 25th.
So you can see Lissa, and I think it's District 2
It's districts 1 and 3. So
1 and 3 together. Okay, thank you for correcting me. On that note, everyone have a good night. It's only 51 more days, I think, till spring.
yep.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
All
everyone.
right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for coming.